Thank you very much, fellow Africans, and welcome to today's episode of the Change for African campaign. Fellow Africans, being on Thursday, I am once again profoundly honored, as always, to present to you our 49th episode of the Change for African campaign under pillar number 4, which is about the living standards of our people in Africa. Fellow Africans, as we have said before, and I'll reiterate that when we speak about living standards of our people in Africa, it is a very broader issue of discussion. We speak about issues like food to our people, we speak about clean water, we speak about healthcare, we speak about cooking fuel, and also speak about cash income. So these are some of the areas we speak about, the 5 areas, and many more areas, but these are the very basic areas because speaking about living standards, we're speaking about things that are directly connected to the human being of the African continent. So it is a very these are very serious matters we are putting on the at the front or on the front line of our discussion about the Change for African campaign in all perspectives. So therefore, fellow Africans, today the very area we're going to focus is about understanding the poverty rates in Africa and some of the figures that are very disturbing. They should be disturbing indeed. This is according to the multidimensional, the MPI, multidimensional poverty index. That was done in 2020, and this is some 5 years ago. And putting in mind that we haven't been having much differences of curbing these situations of poverty in Africa. They're still at a very high rate, and so poverty, it is an issue that we're speaking about numbers here. So very fast, putting in mind that our population of about, then it was about 1.25 billion people, but I think we have grown about 1.2, ranging in the figure of 1.2 and 1.4 billion persons in the continent of Africa. And still in this population, we have 593 million people are actually poor, live in poverty, according to the multidimensional poverty index of 2020. And then 567 million people actually cook with firewood. Speaking about firewood, this one now comes with matters of how our people are living, the areas they live, because firewood is actually associated with cutting down of trees. It's actually associated with the poor lifestyles, if I may say, because in many of these occasions whereby people use firewood, it is because there is no any other clean means of cooking. Because remember, firewood, we are affecting the environment with very many ways, because remember, we are cutting down trees. That is deforestation, contributing then to matters of climate change, because now the global warming issues come in when you cut down trees. Number two, speaking about firewood, also there is how it cooks, because firewood actually emits the carbon emissions. Firewood, so it's also another issue of concern whereby our people are still using firewood, and it's a very huge population. Almost 50% of the Africa's population cook using unclean means or unhealthy means of cooking. That is about the living standards of our people in Africa. Number two is that about 510 million people lack proper sanitation. When you speak about sanitation, it's also an environmental issue. In any perspective, you can speak about our pit latrines, in different ways. We can speak about our cities, how they look like, and where our people are living. And because of living standards, because of how the rates of economy and the rates of life are just made people to live in very destitute conditions. So people have no choice but to live in very dilapidated conditions. So it's also an issue of concern. Speaking about sanitation, remember, sanitation is a very critical issue. So many of the Africa's population still lack a proper sanitation. And then number three, we have 504 million people in Africa actually live in poor or lack quality housing. 504 million people, quality housing. It is an issue of concern. Still today, we still have people who lack quality housing. That is almost half of the Africa's population, 504 million people. And then number four, we have 490 million people actually cannot light a bulb. 490 million people have no privilege to, to electricity, if I may say, or lighting a bulb in their house. It is also an issue of, we need to be judging ourselves so much, because Africa is a continent whereby, speaking about all sources of energy, we have the clean energy. Speaking about sun, we have sun. Speaking about the hydroelectric energy, we have a lot of it, the hydroelectric energy, and many ways of energy, because light is about, it's all about the form of energy you're using, of course. And so many people have not had that privilege of even lighting a bulb, because a bulb is it's a very basic thing, speaking about light, because light is also for the purpose of security. And so huge population still use the traditional means of lighting, use the very old ways, the very retrograde, let me say retrogressive means of lighting their houses. And then we have 387 million in Africa actually lack access to clean water. 387 million persons in Africa lack access to clean water. Remember, water is a very vital component in all the aspects. And so having a population that still 307 million people, it's a huge population that still lags behind, whereby we do not have access to clean water. We have seen this even those in different countries across Africa. Another thing, that are 343 million people actually live in households whereby at least there is one person who is malnourished. Actually, 343 million persons in Africa in households whereby at least one of the people living in that house is malnourished. It is an issue that is live and well. Speaking about malnourishment, we're speaking about nutritional basis. Speaking now that is connected to food, one of the essentials of that we use to measure, or one of the metrics we use in terms of assessing the living standards and the quality of life in which people live in Africa. So these are millions of people still languishing in poverty. These are millions of people who still have no access to clean water. These are millions of people who still have, we still have the cases of malnourishment. Millions of people who still cannot even have a light, cannot lit their house, during them at night, or when it's dark. Still millions of people languishing in very destitute conditions, that if we do not have a very imminent, let me call it that way, or a very radical changes, then we are going to still watch as millions of people continue to live and actually die in poverty. Because as the things go, when things associated with this is that when we have such states of living standard, then it means that also what you call the life expectancy also goes down. The average age in which many people actually live in Africa actually goes down. And so these are some of the things that we still need to be able to see and figure out proper ways on how to interrogate and approach them with the ways of trying to eliminate them completely. Because it's for a very long time that you still have very huge populations in Africa going through hell when it comes to living in Africa. Africa should be a conducive environment for all of us to be able to live, but living standards are still at a very low rate, and we still we still have a lot of work to do in terms of how we can rescue our people from the current living standards in Africa. And fellow Africans, that is where we bring to an end our 49th episode of the Change for African campaign. Thank you very much for being here with us. Let's meet tomorrow as we discuss about our 5th pillar of the Change for African campaign, about the climate change in Africa. Have an interesting afternoon.